Welcome to our very first lecture on insect vectors and diseases. Today, we are going to explore the general features of insects. Imagine a tiny, highly efficient biological robot walking across your desk. Unlike humans, this little creature wears its armor on the outside. Understanding this modular design is the secret behind why these creatures are the most successful animals on planet Earth. More importantly, understanding their physical structure is absolutely critical when we study how insects act as vectors for deadly diseases like malaria and dengue. Let us dive in and see how they are built. Now that we know why insects are important, let us define what they actually are. In scientific terms, an insect is an invertebrate animal belonging to the class Insecta, which sits within the larger phylum Arthropoda. If you look closely at an adult insect, you will notice its body is neatly divided into distinct sections, almost like a train with different cars serving different purposes. Specifically, their body is divided into exactly 3 distinct regions: the head at the front, the thorax in the middle, and the abdomen at the back. This modular body plan is a defining morphological feature that separates them from other arthropods, like spiders or crabs. Building on that 3-part body plan, let us look at the appendages attached to these regions. Every true insect possesses exactly 3 pairs of jointed legs, giving them a total of 6 legs. A crucial detail to remember is that all 6 of these legs are always attached to the middle section, the thorax. Moving to the head, most insects feature 1 pair of antennae, which act as highly sensitive organs for sensory perception. Finally, returning to the thorax, insects typically have 1 or 2 pairs of wings. This makes them incredibly unique, as they are the only invertebrates on Earth capable of powered flight. Having seen their basic structure, we must understand how these features make them such dangerous disease vectors. Insects are encased in a tough outer armor called an exoskeleton, which is made of a complex sugar called chitin. This external armor protects them from drying out and allows them to survive harsh environmental conditions, even resisting certain chemical insecticides we use to control them. Furthermore, the specialized structures on their head, such as piercing mouthparts, are exactly what enable them to bite humans and transmit pathogens directly into our bloodstream. Combined with the high mobility provided by their wings, a single infected mosquito can spread a disease across an entire neighborhood in just one night. While their exoskeleton provides great protection, it also introduces a major biological limitation. One of the most important general features of insects is their small physical size. This size is strictly dictated by their exoskeleton and their unique respiratory system. Unlike us, insects do not have lungs. Instead, they breathe through tiny tubes in their skin called spiracles, relying entirely on the passive diffusion of oxygen to survive. The problem is that as an animal gets bigger, its internal volume increases much faster than its outer surface area. If an insect were to grow too large, it simply would not have enough skin surface to absorb the oxygen its massive internal body requires. To truly grasp why insects must remain small, let us look at the mathematics behind this biological rule. The formula we use is the surface area to volume ratio. In this equation, R represents the surface area to volume ratio. The symbol A stands for the total surface area of the insect's body, which is the space available for oxygen to enter. The symbol V represents the total internal volume or mass of the insect, which is the living tissue that constantly requires oxygen. Conceptually, This formula tells us how much outer skin an animal has compared to its inside guts. If the volume, V, increases too much, the overall ratio, R, drops. When R becomes too small, the insect suffocates. This is exactly why we do not have elephant-sized mosquitoes. Now that we have our formula, let us see this with a concrete example. We will model a small mosquito as a simple cube with a side length of 2 millimeters. We're given the side length, and we need to find the surface area to volume ratio to see why it can easily breathe. First, we calculate the total surface area using the formula for the area of 6 sides, which gives us 24 square millimeters. Next, we calculate the internal volume by cubing the side length, resulting in 8 cubic millimeters. Finally, we divide the surface area of 24 by the volume of 8. This gives us a final ratio of 3. Physically, this high ratio means the insect has plenty of surface area relative to its internal volume, allowing oxygen to easily diffuse and keep it alive. This mathematical limitation on size brings us to another fascinating challenge. How do insects grow? Because insects are trapped inside that hard, chitinous exoskeleton we discussed earlier, they cannot grow gradually like humans do. Instead, they must periodically shed their old skin in a process called molting. This means that their rigid features, like the head capsule, do not grow in smooth, continuous curves. Instead, they grow in discrete, predictable jumps after every single molt. For entomologists, understanding this step-by-step growth pattern is absolutely essential because it allows us to identify the exact developmental stage of a vector insect when we find it in the field. To predict these discrete jumps in size, we rely on a mathematical principle known as Dyer's law. Conceptually, this law states that the width of an insect's hard parts increases by a constant ratio after each molt. The formula is W sub n equals W sub 0 times k raised to the power of n. Let us break down these symbols. W sub n is the final head width after a certain number of molts. W sub 0 is the initial starting head width. The symbol K represents the constant growth factor, which is unique to the species. Finally, N is the number of molting events. If the number of molts N increases, the final width W sub N grows exponentially, beautifully capturing the step-by-step physical expansion of the insect's exoskeleton. Now that we have defined Dyer's law, let us apply it to a real-world scenario. We are given a mosquito larva with an initial head width of 0.5 millimeters and a growth constant of 1.4. We are asked to find its head width after 2 molts. We choose the exponential growth formula because it perfectly models this biological reality. First, we substitute our known values into the equation, replacing W sub 0 with 0.5, K with 1.4, and N with 2. Next, we square the growth constant of 1.4 to get 1.96. Finally, multiplying this by the initial width gives us 0.98 millimeters. Physically, this tells us that after just 2 molts, the insect's head has nearly doubled in size, helping us determine if it is old enough to become a dangerous adult vector. Having calculated how they grow, let us now visually bring all these anatomical features together. What you are looking at is a generalized diagram of an insect's body plan. Notice how clearly the body is divided into 3 distinct regions. At the top, we have the head, equipped with antennae and compound eyes for sensing the environment. Moving down to the middle section, we see the thorax. Notice that all the locomotion appendages are attached right here, the 3 pairs of jointed legs and the membranous wings. Finally, at the bottom, we have the large segmented abdomen, which houses the organs for digestion and reproduction. This diagram perfectly illustrates the modular, highly efficient design that makes insects such successful survivors. As we wrap up our lecture, let us reinforce the most important ideas we have covered today. First, remember that insect bodies are strictly divided into a head, a thorax, and an abdomen, equipped with 6 jointed legs and encased in a protective chitinous exoskeleton. Second, their physical size is not random. It is strictly limited by the physics of the surface area to volume ratio, which dictates their respiratory efficiency. Finally, because of their hard armor, they must grow in discrete jumps through molting, a process we can mathematically predict using Dyer's law. You have now mastered the fundamental anatomical traits of insects. This is a fantastic foundation, and it is the very first step in learning how these tiny creatures become such potent vectors for human diseases.